Welcome to Bracket U, a college basketball bracket podcast brought to you by Delphi Bracketology. We're in our 11th year of doing work. This is probably our last episode unless we do something with our meeting next Tuesday to talk brackets with you. We appreciate those of you who have tuned in and listened tonight. I'm joined by junior Josh Reynolds, a first-year member, but a quick learner and a really good eye on this basketball stuff. I'm Brian Tonsoni. We like to thank our Delphi administration for their support of our club, for Bob Thompson for the intro music, for Bryson Hutzel for putting together the video, and for Jared Morris, our friend at the Back Home Network, who has given us guidance in all of our podcast needs. All right, Josh, we are about 10 days away, 11 days. We're in the middle of a lot of conference tournaments, and the brackets are starting to solidify a little bit. How are you feeling about what we've done so far?
I'm excited for the tournament. Obviously, I think everybody in the country is right now. I'm really happy and proud of what we've done, but I do think there's still some work to be done.
We had a really long meeting today, and I don't know that we made any really decisive decisions because a lot of areas are very, very razor thin, none of which the most is probably the one seed line where you have six teams battling it out for four one seeds. And our one seeds as of right now are Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida as they beat Alabama. Alabama is the top two seed, followed by Tennessee and Michigan State. Those are, I think, the seven teams that are likely to be on the one seed line come Selection Sunday. Josh, how do you like Florida being on that one seed line, and can they hold on to it?
I 100% agree with Florida being a one seed as of right now, since they did beat Alabama at Alabama, a huge win for them, and I believe Alabama has lost their last two. But I think if Tennessee wins their next one and Florida loses, Tennessee could make that jump to number one. But I believe if Florida wins, then they are one seed.
Yeah, Tennessee and Florida both beat Alabama just recently, and it's just really close between those three SEC teams. And normally we don't put a lot of stock in the conference tournaments, but as we were talking off the air before the show, they might matter a little bit as these teams play with these razor thin resumes. So Florida for us. Their record is 26-4, Alabama 23-7, Tennessee 24-6, and everyone knows the metrics. You put Alabama or Tennessee up there because of their quad one wins, but the metrics favor Florida. It's close, people. It is really close. I think Auburn, Duke, and Houston are relatively safe, short of a couple losses or an early exit in their conference tournament. But we think those top three are there. The only question on the two seed line is what do we do at the end? Wisconsin, St. John's, Texas Tech, really the two seed there, 8 through 14 or 15 is really, really close. You can go any direction. Josh, I'm going to come back to you on our three seed line. We've had Kentucky up there. We've had Purdue. We have A&M, Texas Tech. How do you see that playing out? Our last two to our middle of the four seed.
I mean, all these teams are just so close in resumes. And I think I've seen some people put St. John's as a two seed, but then I've also seen people put a team like Louisville at a lower seed because they're 4-5 in the quad one, but St. John's is 3-4. So I like how we have them right now, and I think the last week in conference championships will make a big difference in these last 2-3 seasons.
So so much depends on what criteria is the major emphasis for this particular committee. St. John's 3-4 in quad one, but 10-0 in quad two, pretty impressive. And they won the Big East. If they run the table, like you said, and win the Big East tournament, I think you're going to see them here at the top three line. Are the metrics more in play this year than the quad system? How is the resume, the wins above bubble? We're really going to tell a lot afterwards about this committee. We think that, road record and road quad one, I looked at today, Josh, and found that last year teams that had really good road records in quad one and 1A did a little bit better in the seeding. So that's something we might need to dig into here these last 4 or 5 days before we set our basic bracket. Texas Tech, Texas A&M, and Purdue and Kentucky, I think I think there's 6 teams for those 4 spots on the 3, and I'm not sold on Wisconsin being the last 2 seed. In fact, I would probably vote to move Wisconsin down, and then it's a question of St. John's or Texas Tech up. I thought you had a really good take there on St. John's. Then we go to our 4 seed line, Kentucky, Iowa State, leftovers from that discussion, Michigan, Oregon. You know, Michigan's lost a couple in a row, and you got to fight that recency bias. They have 9 wins in quad 1, and it's the body of work. And they're 6-1, I believe, in quad 1 on the road. So not only have they won a lot of good games, they've won a lot of good games on the road. I think the committee is going to look fairly on them. Obviously, at 22-8 and a net of 28, they're probably going to be a 4, but their resume is not bad. Josh, how do you see our 4 seed line breaking down?
I mean, I think it's very interesting. Again, Michigan's lost a couple recently, so has Iowa State. Oregon's been on a big roll after they were losing a lot in January. Again, I think it's going to come down to the tournaments. I think that's what we're going to see with most of these teams and between each seed lines, just because of how close each team is this year.
And you know, it is the seeds 1 through 8 are all good quality teams. You know, looking back last year, you started seeing teams with 3, 4, like 4 and 8, 5 and 9 in quad 1. You have teams of almost all the teams going down until you reach the middle of our 5 seed line are above 500 in quad 1. And there's only 1 or 2 in the 6 seed range that are under 500, like 5 and 6 and 6 and 9 Missouri. So I think it's a deeper tournament, 1 through 8. So when you're filling out your brackets in about 10 days, you know, it's going to be interesting. Some of those games to get to the Sweet 16, not as easy as some people will think. So let's talk a little teams that are interesting. We have St. Mary's sitting here, Josh, at 18 in the net, 26-4, winners of the West Coast Conference. 4-2 in quad 1, not as many quad 1 wins. A pretty good combination of 10-4 overall, 9-1 on the road. They've been all over the place in this 5 through 7 range. How do we look at those teams like St. Mary's? How do you feel about a good overall record, good quads, but maybe not as good as teams behind them like Arizona, Maryland, and UCLA? Should we move them down?
I like where we have St. Mary's right now, just because of the bias to St. John's, with them being 3-4 in the quad 1. I know they're 10-0 in the quad 2, and they've had some very good wins there, like UConn and some others. But 3-4 in quad 1, that's not good. And St. John's is a 3 seed right now, almost a 2 seed. I've seen them be a 2 seed in some brackets. So if they're going to be that high, why would we hate on St. Mary's and Clemson and Louisville, like I said earlier, for being not amazing in the quad 1? And St. Mary's, they're not in a strong conference, so they don't really get the opportunity. Like their conference strength of schedule is 92, and their non-conference is 98. So it's very similar.
Yeah, and the metrics play a little bit in this too. St. Mary's average net is 18, which is a 5 seed. If you put that, if you average out one of their metrics, that's 19.3. That would be a 5 seed in the resume metrics, with a WOB of 22, which is just a 6 seed. So they're right on that 5-6 cut line. And Josh and I talked about sharing with you as you're listening. We could pretty much tell you that it's going to be within a couple seed ranges, and normally we're close to there. We'll have teams either on the exact seed line or one off most of these teams. So if you're following us and have a particular team that you're interested in, ask us a question here if you're watching live, or if later, go to X and send us a question. We can probably tell you a 3 seed range for sure right now, even before the tournaments. And then it just depends on if a committee values them and moves them up or down compared to about 3 or 4 other teams right around that area. And so St. Mary's, I think, is probably a 5 or a 6. I know some other people have them all the way down to a 7. I think historically the winner of the West Conference has been looked upon a little bit better than that. So I can see a 5, and I would understand a 6 as well for a team like St. Mary's. Josh, do you have a team you want to talk about that's between here and the bubble? We'll get to the bubble a little bit later.
I mean, there's a lot of teams I want to talk about. I'll probably talk about 2 here. Kansas, we just moved them down in class today. I hate them personally. 5-10 in quad 1, 5-1 in quad 2. losing record, not good at all. But it's Kansas, so I don't know if the committee's going to keep them up or push them down. It's hard to tell. And then UCLA, I believe they have one quad three loss, and I'm pretty sure that was in the first 4 weeks of the year. And ever since then, they've just been on a roll. And I think if they didn't lose that quad three game, they would be up much higher.
So let's tackle UCLA first. 26 in the net, 9 quad one wins, 9 and 7. Quad 1 and 2 is 13 and 8. I looked at them, and we had them as a low 6 seed. We now have them as the top 6 seed. That's a team that if they win their last game and then they advance a couple rounds in the Big Ten tournament, I think you could see up at the 5 seed range, replacing the St. Mary's and Arizona, Maryland, if those teams should fall a little bit. But I think UCLA is probably in that 5-6, and I just have a hard time seeing a 9-win team with a 26 net falling into that 7 seed range. But those are the types of teams. They were there with Memphis, Marquette, Missouri, teams that have struggled as of late. Marquette and Missouri, Memphis, who won a lot of games early. Those teams are somewhat difficult to seed. I'm losing a little bit of faith with Missouri now 6-9 in quad one with no bad losses, 3-7 on the road. Are they a 6 or maybe even now falling to a 7? Kansas. How do you put Kansas on the 8 seed line? I think they were a number 1 team at the beginning of the year. They were number 4 at the reveal. That's the thing that worried me, and I didn't bring up in class. They were 17-7 at the reveal and a 4 seed, and so they're 2-4. And is that bad enough to drop from the 4 to the 8 seed line? And I happen to think you're right. I think they're 5-10. They've only won 1/3 of their top games, and they're 10-11 overall in quad 1 and 2, 4-8 on the road. But you look at it. They scheduled hard, and they have great wins. And so if great wins matter in comparison to Ole Miss and Illinois and BYU, I think you'll see Kansas 7 line. The Louisville's tough too. You know, Louisville hasn't played the schedule that other teams have played because the ACC is so bad from top to bottom. There's only going to be 3 teams, maybe 4 teams in a tournament. They've beaten all those teams, but they can't get quad 1 wins because they don't play quad 1 games. And how do you compare that to a team? They've only played 9, and Kansas has played 15, but Louisville's won 44% of their games, and Kansas has only won 33%. How would Louisville do with Kansas's schedule? How would Louisville do in the Big Ten? I think metrics and other things are going to have to figure that out. Louisville is currently the top 7 seed for us, but those are some teams that we struggle with because, you know, you can find good on your resume and you can find really bad on your resume. You're listening to Delphi Bracketology, Bracket U. We're talking about some bracket decisions here. I see we have a few people in watching live. We even have a question, and so we'll go to that question right now. I think it's a good one. Josh, Fearing 13 says, interested in thoughts about Creighton. Best case if they win the Big East tourney versus worst case losing in the first Big Ten round. Let me go and see what I think of Creighton. Creighton right now is on the 8-9 cut line for us. They could be an 8, they could be a 9. Typically, you see, if they would make a run and win the Big East tournament, I think they're going to pick up some quad wins along the line, and winning the tournament also carries weight. Last year, I think Illinois moved up 5 or 6 spots for winning the Big Ten. I think you've seen other teams when they run the table and win. I would probably say that's going to be – they got one more regular season game. They win that. That's 22 and 3 games. That would be 25-9, likely 7 quad 1 wins. The 4 losses there stick out in comparison to – and quad 2 stick out. I'm saying 7 seed at best, and I think they're pretty much locked at that 9 with the teams that are on the 10 seed line. I do not see – Creighton falling below a 9. Josh, your thoughts?
I agree with you, but I mean, we have Kansas as our top 8 seed, so if Creighton wins the Big East, I 100% think that they would jump to the top of the 8s at the least. I could see them moving up to the 7s, maybe if BYU or Ole Miss loses really early.
Yeah, so I think you're in a 7, 8, 9 range. Slight chance, depending if there's a lot of failure ahead of that, to reach a 6. But I would say 7, 8, and 9. Thanks for the question. We appreciate it. And anyone else, throw a question in. We'll be glad to try to answer it for you. All right, so those are some teams that Josh wanted to talk about. Some of the teams that Louisville's the one that is frustrating for me. I have a hard time thinking a 25 net, 24-6 team can be lower than a 7, with all the road records and 12-6 in quad 1 and 2 and the metrics. I believe for Louisville. Let me take a look at Louisville real quick. 20th in wins against bubble, 17.7 resume average, and a 25 predictive. Those are all 6 and 7 ranges. I some of the people I respect in this business have them as an 8. I might be wrong on that one, but we'll see. All right, Josh, let's take it to the back end where, I'm going to read off our 10 and 11 seeds and a couple 12 seeds now. We've pushed a couple of the bubble teams down to a play-in game on the 12 seed line. We'll bracket that tonight and tomorrow and put it out on our webpage, DelphiBracketology.com. So we have teams that probably still need to win a game or two on this 10 seed line. That's Utah State, Baylor, West Virginia, San Diego State. San Diego State being the one in the most jeopardy, with Utah State, Baylor, and West Virginia a little more comfortable because of the number of wins, schedule strength. Those are teams that aren't safe yet. I'm not sure even Georgia or Vanderbilt above them are safe, but believe so. And then we get into Ohio State, Arkansas, Indiana, Oklahoma, and Xavier. Must wins for those teams. Those are our last teams, 5 teams in. And then we have Texas, North Carolina, and Boise State as probably the 3 best chances to move their way into the tournament. Josh, the bubble, it gave us a lot of heartache today. I don't think we had a vote for Texas, a vote for Xavier, a vote for Indiana, all to get in, and I don't think we resolved anything. Share your thoughts on how extremely hard that is on the bubble.
I have a love-hate relationship with the bubble this year. The only reason I love it is because I'm an Ohio State fan, and they're not very good. But since the bubble's awful this year, that gives them a chance to be in the tournament, which I guess is good, even if they get killed the first round. But, I mean, I think Utah State and Baylor are both pretty much in, which is weird because we have Georgia and Vanderbilt over them, and I don't think either of them are in if they lose 2 more, especially Georgia. But then, I mean, just Ohio State, Arkansas, Indiana. Ohio State plays Indiana on Saturday, I believe. That's a must-win game for both of the teams. I think whoever wins that is going to be in. If they win one tournament game, which I believe they both should. And then Oklahoma, Xavier, I personally think they should be dropped for Texas and North Carolina. I hate North Carolina, but as we bring up a lot here, the commissioner is the North Carolina's AD, so that has to play a role. And I love Texas being 5-9 in quad 1.
Yeah, there was a lot of love for Texas in our group today. I had to kind of stave that off because I don't like Texas being in. But there are 2 outstanding games this weekend, Oklahoma and Texas. Loser might be out. Indiana, Ohio State, loser might be out. But here's the thing that we tell our group. If you're going to kick someone out, you got to put someone in. And when we think there's only 3 really good opportunities and for teams, and those teams aren't eye-popping, right? Xavier 1-9 in quad 1, have some quad 2 wins. You have North Carolina, which really has 1 win over UCLA, and that's about it on their resume. But their metrics are okay, and they haven't had a whole lot of bad losses. And then you have Boise State, which I think is probably the best team to be in. We had them in earlier in the week, and then you had Oklahoma win some games. So what for you, if you were going to bracket this the way you wanted, what criteria is important for you with these last set of teams on the bubble?
I mean, it's interesting. I would like to say quad one, like 1A wins, but there's just so little between most of the teams. I would probably go their non-conference strength of schedule, then their away record, and then their WAB.
Yeah, it's for me. It's very, very interesting. This WAB wins against Bubble has been talked up. What's it going to play like in the conference committee room? We might have paid a little more attention to that than we should have. I think it's a really good metric. It's what's the average team at the bubble that we're talking about. How do they rank? And the better score you get, the better team you are against most tourney teams. So you want to have a lower number, which makes you better. And then there are websites that'll rank all of those. And so let's just share with our listeners the teams. If we sort them by this new wins against Bubble, here are the teams in order that are on the bubble. So Oklahoma would be 37th, which would be a 10 seed. And despite their bad conference record, that's a good number for them. Arkansas is 40. And then you go down North Carolina, which you want to put in, is 44. So North Carolina would be in. Indiana is right behind them at 45. And then Xavier at 46. So if that metric carries a lot of weight in the committee room, those are your last 5 teams in, with Ohio State, Wake Forest, Texas right behind them, and Boise State out. But it is never just one metric. If you put that in that order, then you go to the quads and you see who's got more wins, and then the road record, as you say, and the non-conference strength of schedule, and who did you play and where did you play them comes in. And so, you can't just order them by one. If we go to the net, let me share with you, if we just go with the net, which is kind of a predictive metric, your team's in order. Then Ohio State. North Carolina shows up again when you go to the net, followed by Arkansas and Texas. There's where Josh is coming in. When you have the net, you put those teams in. And then Boise State is in, and that would leave out Xavier, Oklahoma, and Indiana if you sorted it by the net. So 2 different metrics, 2 different sets of teams in, and we haven't even talked about the quad system yet, or the non-conference strength of schedule, or any combination of 1, 2, and 3 quad losses and wins. So that's how crazy it is. And I think when you get down, Josh, to the very end, someone in that committee is pushing a certain metric for a vote between 2 or 3 teams, and if that team is better than the other on that metric of emphasis, they get the wins, they get the votes to go in. So I think you're absolutely right. It's going to be interesting. We try to look from top to bottom the same, but we have seen in the past at the back end, sometimes the quad – Notre Dame had like 4 quad 1 and 2 wins in 2022 and snuck in, and we had no idea they would get in because they were emphasizing quad 1, 2, and 3 and some road records and some other things. So we got to make sure that we do the best we can, and then you just let it happen on Selection Sunday. So you have North Carolina and Texas that you would like to put in. So you have Xavier, Oklahoma, Indiana, Arkansas, and Ohio State to drop out. Who are you dropping out in order to put Texas and North Carolina in?
100% dropping Xavier. 1 and 9. Yes, I'm saying put 1 and 10, or 1 and 9 in quad 1. Yes, I'm saying put North Carolina in, who's 1 and 10. But Xavier also has a quad 2 loss, and Xavier's quad 1 losses are a lot worse than North Carolina's quad 1 losses. And I'd also, it's hard, but I would think about dropping Arkansas, just because Oklahoma's 5 and 10 and quad 1, Arkansas is 5 and 9. But then you go to quad 2 and Arkansas is 2 and 3, while Oklahoma's 4 and 1. Yes, Oklahoma has a quad 3 loss, but that was way earlier in the year, I believe. And Oklahoma also has a harder non-conference schedule.
Yeah, I'm with you. Oklahoma, if you could just get past the fact that they've only won 5 conference games and haven't played, they did all their damage. They were 5-0 in neutral. And they beat several teams that are ranked in the top 5 of our seed list. But they did that in November and December. Do you forget that for how they're playing? It's not official. It's not the last how you're doing in the last 10 games matters. It's the body of work. I think Oklahoma should be up. I can understand dropping Arkansas. I think Oklahoma has to win. Maybe, maybe not. Xavier is our last team in. I would I don't know. Boise State's the team for me. I understand your arguments for Texas and North Carolina, especially with the net. I like North Carolina's strength of schedule. I think when you schedule that hard, I know you got to win those games, but if there is a crazy team that's going to make it this year that everyone thinks shouldn't and they'll complain about it, I think you'll see North Carolina in Dayton. I'm concerned about my Indiana Hoosiers. I know they are 4-12 and 4-0 and no losses outside of Quad 1. That makes them 8-12. But the 4-0 in Quad 1 in Quad 2 is not. It's against teams that aren't in the tournament. They only have 2 wins, 3 wins if you count Ohio State. So if they beat Ohio State, they'll really only have 2 wins against the field. I think Indiana has to win 2 games to get in. And if so, they're going to be playing in Dayton. I don't think they escape Dayton unless there is a collapse from the 10 seed line. I don't think they're out. I think it would be Xavier as well, and you'd put in Boise State for Xavier in my scenario. But that's kind of what we're watching. Saturday, 3:45, Indiana, Ohio State in Bloomington, and then at 8 o'clock, Oklahoma at Texas. By about 10:30, you home bracketologists should be able to figure out at least 2 teams are above the other 2 teams. A loss doesn't mean you're automatically out because you can still do some damage in the conference tourney, but it really puts teams behind that. Josh, what else you want to share before we jump out of here on this Thursday evening?
I think this year this is the closest year it's ever been, with the top seeds being so good compared to each other and the bubble being so bad compared to each other. And I know some of you might think mid-majors and stuff, which I love mid-majors. I think they should definitely be in, especially this year with the bubble. But I don't know if the committee would do that. They've gone away from it for a couple of years. But I look at VCU and Drake's resume. Even if they don't win their tournaments, I believe that if they both win 2 to 3 games, they should definitely be in. The only thing that scares me about Drake, though, is their net is 59, which is awful. But I think they make up for that with being 5-0 in the quad 1 and 2 and a 10-1 road record. That's very strong.
Thanks for that save. I almost forgot. We talked earlier about these bid thieves. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 bid stealers, bid thieves, whatever you want to call. Those are the teams that pull upsets over the league champion. And I think Memphis is in regardless. They're automatically in. If they lose their conference tournament, they're going to be in. They're probably going to be seated at a 6, 7, or 8, depending on what the committee says. The questions are VCU, Drake, and UC San Diego. If there are upsets in those tournaments, I think you're going to see at least one of them or maybe 2. If you have a bubble like this with a team, at 4-12 let me just take my Indiana Hoosiers so I don't, make anyone mad. Maybe the Hoosier fans will be mad, but 4-12 and 5-0 in Quad 2, if they beat Ohio State, is really not a great resume. But VCU's only lost 4 or 5 games, and Drake's only lost 3. I honestly would rather see teams like that in. They had a boost in the quads recently. They gained because other teams that they played gained in the net. But the committee already knows that, right? So while we can sit here and say VCU is 2-1 and 3-3, and Drake's now 2-0 and 3-0 in the various quads, these committee members go over this information with a fine-tooth comb. They know that a team might move from 75 to 76 and move a number from one quad to the other. It's still going to be looked at on their resume as a win against a team that was right there, maybe on the 1 quad or the 2 quad line. The thing that worries me about the mid-majors is last year Indiana State. So let's look real quick before we sign off at 29 VCU. I have a lot of VCU buddies. We have a lot of VCU fans. I know we're rooting for them. Their best win is at Dayton and at St. Joe's. That they are 69 net and 70 net, and they beat a Colorado State that's coming on That's their schedule is not good, so they're a little bit shaky. When we go to Drake, let me scroll down on my list here. Drake is what's their net? I can find them easier
59.
that way. 59. It's a little
That's
low
their
still.
net. Yeah.
That's
They-
a struggle. They have beaten Vanderbilt, a tournament team, on a
yeah.
neutral. They've beaten Kansas State at Kansas State, a Big 12 team that was supposed to be a lot better and played well for about a 3-week stretch. They beat Bradley and Northern Iowa, the 2 and 3 seeds on the road. They do have 3 quad 3 losses. So, again, if you want to find reasons to keep them out, you're going to find reasons to keep them out. But I would not be surprised if a VCU at least one of those get in. But let's say 2 of those get in, 3 of those, Memphis gets beat, VCU gets beat, and Drake, and they put them all in. We know they're going to put Memphis in. So what does that do? Right now, if 3 bid stealers, Xavier would drop out, Oklahoma would drop out, and Indiana would drop out according to our seed list. And then the 4 play-in game at Dayton would be West Virginia, San Diego State, Ohio State, and Arkansas. So really, if you're anywhere in the last 4 to 8, you could still end up in Dayton, depending on how many. And last year, Josh, there were 5 bid thieves. So yeah, good save there. I forgot that we wanted to talk about that a little bit. So let's get a prediction: Ohio State or Indiana?
I'm
It's
going
you
to take
against
Ohio
me,
State.
buddy.
I'm going to take
All
Ohio
right,
State. I love them too much.
And I'm your teacher. Otherwise, I'd wager something there for you. Oklahoma, Texas, at Texas.
I'm going to take Texas. They've been playing really good basketball lately.
I'll take Oklahoma. I can't give you extra credit. Like, we can't bet extra credit, right, for your grade. You don't need it anyway. But Josh, thank you for being on the shows and on the TV shows. And we got a really big week ahead of us. I'm looking forward to your opinions on what we do. You have a very good evening. But that's going to wrap it up for our show tonight. Again, follow us at DelphiBracketology.com. We have tournament capsules there. We will have our bracket and our seed list. We may come on live down here when we have the whole group. We're going to have 15 to 20 people down here putting this thing all together on Tuesday night. We are covering the Horizon League. I will be there in Indianapolis for the Horizon League semifinals. A lot of good stuff going on. Twitter or X at Delphi Brackets. Send us your question. We'll try to answer them as best as we possibly can. But for Josh Reynolds, I'm Brian Tonsoni. Good luck to your teams, and thank you for watching.